everybody. This is Jeff with Junior Hockey Advisor, but tonight it's Junior Hockey Live. Here with Mike Bloom. Bloomer, how you doing?
I'm good, Jeff. How are things over there?
Can't ask for a better day. Nothing better than having a May day, 37 degrees and drizzle rain for the last 3 days. It doesn't get better than this. It doesn't get better.
Got 61 degrees and sunny here today, so.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Feels like spring.
Listen, Junior Hockey Live. What we're gonna do tonight? We got a lot of stuff to do. We got to talk about the BCHL and its moves. We got to talk about the USHL Draft. We got to talk about the USHL playoffs, the NAL playoffs. What am I missing? Anything else?
I'm sure there's other things, but that's pretty good to get an episode in. And it's been a while since we've had one, so we're coming in with a ton of info today.
Is your mic on, Mike? Is your mic on, Mike? Maybe a little closer because it's not showing up. We're not getting much from you here.
Interesting.
Before we start getting a couple of our regulars complaining about you not having a voice on the show, we better get you sounding right. So, okay, let's see if that works.
Sound better now?
Oh, does it sound great now?
Crystal clear.
Crystal clear and ready to go. Awesome. Well, okay, let's what do you want to start with? What do you think? Well, first of all, you got a question, you got a comment, throw it on, try to get it on to us early. The earlier you get it on, the more we can talk about it. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts on some of the things we're talking about tonight. So, please join us. Tell us where you're from, who you are, and we'd love to have you on. Besides, it gives me somebody else to talk to besides Bloomer. And that's always fun. All right, let's start with the biggest news, I think. I think the biggest news is the BCHL news. It's not the blockbuster news that, there's other people that are online like this is going to be the game changer, the whole world. And some of you know who I'm talking about. There's a fake news in the hockey world out there that this was going to be the blockbuster move that's going to change junior hockey forever. And don't commit to a team because this is going to change everything. Well, I don't know. Let's get into it. BCHL. What I wanted to do first is I wanted to run the BCHL piece if I can find it, and I think I've got it here. Let me get it up here. If I can find it, I will run it for you guys and let you guys be the judge of this. And of course, you saw me, Mike. You saw me preparing this before we went on. I actually took, there we go. Okay, so let me go over here. We'll put this screen on. It'll take a few minutes to run through this, but I think this will give everybody an idea what we're talking about. So put in the comments if this is not running right, and I'll let it run here for us.
For 61 years, the BCHL has been striving to be the best Junior A hockey league in Canada. A league known as a pathway to scholarships and for putting players first, for being a league where hockey dreams come true. We are proud of our history, but the BCHL must modernize, and our plan is to do just that, to level up. Our mission is to establish a tier of junior hockey never before seen in Canada, raise standards, provide more opportunities for players, and increased excitement for fans in this province. Imagine a next generation of junior hockey in BC, a league with bigger goals, a league dedicated to sending even more players to NCAA Division I schools, a modern league with a focus on keeping scholarship and NHL dreams alive while honing skills here on home ice. After years of searching for solutions, asking for an audience with the governing body to brainstorm new pathways for players to compete close to home, without success, the BCHL's Board of Governors have voted to not renew the league's agreement with Hockey Canada. This bold move gives the BCHL's 18 franchises freedom to become a much more dynamic and modern independent league. To understand why, we need to understand the national system and how the BCHL has outgrown that system. Hockey Canada is the national governing body for hockey within the country, and it oversees all leagues in our sport. Hockey Canada's system provides strong support for many of those leagues, teams, and players across the country. However, the system has not evolved to support college tracking hockey in Canada, which is trending upward. Here's the issue. In the Hockey Canada development model, the Canadian Hockey League is considered the top tier and has been given advantages. However, if a player signs with a major junior team, it immediately disqualifies them from U.S. college schools because the NCAA considers the CHL a professional league. This is not the case for Junior A, which is why so many Canadians play in our league, to preserve that college eligibility. If players under the age of 18 do not have a proven college tracking option in their own branch or region, they're restricted from signing in the BCHL by Hockey Canada regulations unless their parents move to British Columbia. Often, they're forced to leave Canada to play in the United States. What we are left with is a system that encourages Canadian players with scholarship aspirations to pursue their junior hockey development in the U.S. The BCHL believes that players should have two development paths in Canada: Major Junior leading to the National Hockey League, and College Tracking Junior leading to a U.S. college, and then the NHL. Both are important, and both should be supported.
So let's stop right there for a second. There's a little bit left. I want to watch the rest of this, but isn't this – I mean, I guess what they're saying here is they want to upgrade their level of players so that they've got more people that are going to the NHL from the BCHL? I don't know, because right now the BCHL is the pathway to the NCAA for the most part. It's the major pathway in Canada. What's the difference, Mike? What am I missing here?
I think the biggest difference that I can see is the fact that right now for Canadian kids, they have to live within British Columbia in order to play for the BCHL. With their new alignment, it doesn't matter where they live, they can go and play there because they're not restricted in any way.
Okay, so right now, if we look at the BCHL, which it should come up here in a second, and while I'm doing this, what I wanted to do is I just want to grab a team and grab a roster. Let's grab, let's go down here. Whoops, sorry. Let's go down here. I'll grab it. I'll grab the Clippers here. And so if I'm looking at their roster right now, they've got one. Well, look, what they do is they get these duels, which don't count as transfers. So even though they live in PA and this one lives in Las Vegas, they're still dual citizens. But everybody else is a BC except for the Americans. They're all from, well, except for here. That's a Quebec kid, Ontario kid. So already I don't understand, unless what they're saying is there's a limit on those kids that come in from the other, and they want an open door. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no, you're looking at the kids who may have been born in Ontario or, Quebec City or whatever, but now live in the BC, whether they did that in order to play in the BC or they moved earlier on.
I get you, but there's a heck of a lot of kids already doing that. And that's no different than a kid in the States moving to the Detroit area or the Chicago market to play U15, U16, U18. I mean, so they're already in a sense, they're already.
Parents would have to move. The parents have to move their home and everything else in order for that to work.
Technically, that's what you have to do also in a lot of the states and a lot of the districts. For example, to play in most of the teams, you're supposed to move into the market. I think they get a couple. Like Victory Honda gets a couple kids they can bring in from out of the state, but they end up having 6, 7, 8 kids from out of state because they take up residency there somehow. They get an apartment. Their parents actually do move. I mean, Rocco Grimaldi was a California kid playing for Little Caesars when it said Detroit on his address because his whole family moved in there. They just picked up and moved across. So I guess that's the same thing they're dealing with, because I understand their system, but I'm not understanding what the independence does that's going to improve them. Okay. Yes, maybe it gets them the ability to not have to move, the family moving. Okay, that's advantage. That's an advantage. I can clearly agree with them that if that's the case. Let's watch the rest of it, and let's see if there's anything else that gets picked up on here.
BCHL tried to modernize junior hockey within Hockey Canada. The decision to become an independent league was made after nearly 5 years of good faith efforts to find solutions. BCHL owners, governors, executives, and committees thoroughly explored all options, but were unable to get meaningful dialogue, responses, or attention from governing leadership at Hockey Canada. After years of asking for dialogue with no progress, the time has come for change and a new path forward. The BCHL is entering a new era, offering more opportunities to our players and communities under regulations that will grow college tracking hockey in Canada. More and more BCHL players are earning scholarships to NCAA Division I schools while playing in the league, as demonstrated by the league record 185
Okay, just these numbers are up here, and these are real numbers. I did verify this. I mean, it's always a snapshot, so you're always grabbing what, but they do have 188 NCAA Division I committed players. That's not unusual for them. 411 alumni players. That number's close to being right on or is spot on. I didn't see anything that stood out when I went and looked at that today. 97% of BC-born player athletes playing Division I hockey played in the BCHL. That makes sense so far, unless the kid jumps to the USHL, but it's hard to pull a kid from the BC when he's got the ability to play for the BCHL, And then the national champion Quinnipiac University had 14 BCHL alum. I'm surprised they didn't have more because they're known for pulling from that program, and that's an East Coast thing with Division I programs. We've talked about this before, where the BC they play 1 year, they go from prep to 1 year in the BC, and then back to the East Coast for schools like Harvard, Quinnipiac, BC, BU. You get that Providence. All those schools get a ton of BC kids. So none of the stats here, there's nothing they played with here. Those are accurate across the board. You agree with that, Mike?
Yeah.
Committed players set this year. As part of the plan, the BCHL will host exciting new events, including a potential post-playoff tournament, the showcase event, our top prospects game, outdoor all-star event, and roadshow will continue to expand and grow to help increase valuable exposure. The player pool will increase, and the league will be able to recruit any player from out of province and the States, in addition to those outside of North America. And that being said, our priority remains to develop BC athletes, and minimum roster rules will not change.
Okay, so that's a big statement there. Minimum roster rules won't change. So if minimum roster rules aren't going to change and they're going to keep their rosters set the same way, I mean, this is a BC league first and foremost. They're not going to change everything overnight and all of a sudden make this where there's only a third of the kids from the BC, that their fan base would turn on them. So what am I missing here? I mean, I get it. Independence, I like that part of it. The fact that they're not under Hockey Canada, we've seen a big surge towards all that in the United States with the EHL, with the USPHL, with the NCDC. So moving away from the major organizations is not it's already a kind of tried and true, is a method to have more independence on your league. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. Putting more events in, I get it. But if their roster minimums are going to stay the same for the Americans coming in and the out of province coming in, what's really changing?
I don't know if when they said roster minimums, they were speaking on their import rules, or if they just meant, I don't know what their minimums are. If it's like 23, 25 players, that would remain the same,
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying, that they're not going to add,
they're not going to have 40 kids as a part of their roster.
Right. Okay, maybe that sounds good. Anybody out there have any questions on this, or comments? Because this is new territory. I want to say it's new territory. I think everybody's seen this coming, but now it's official. There's about a minute left. Let's go through and hear less than a minute left. Let's just let it finish off, then we can chat about it a little bit more.
Parents and families can rest assured that the standards of excellence in their day-to-day hockey experiences will only improve in the new era of the BCHL. With a track record in Canada of sending the most players to NCAA Division I programs, the BCHL has already established itself as a premier college tracking junior league, but we have bigger aspirations for players and our league. Imagine an independent and inclusive BCHL with young players from our great province across Canada and around the world. A league built on speed, skill, and player safety. A league where all players see a path to NCAA hockey. The BCHL, the home of modern hockey.
Okay, so I think we just may have hit on part of it. And, we won't spend all night on this because I know we got other topics to go on. They just said worldwide recruiting right there. I don't know if you picked that up. So instead of having just the rest of the provinces, which they already get, it's just a matter how they get them. They already have an allotment of kids that play up there from the States. Now, if they open this up to the kids from out, from the European markets, that changes things. That does change things, and it'll be interesting to see where that affects things most. Is that because the BCHL would now be competing with the USHL, does the USHL take a hit, or do the European teams take a hit, or is it equal distribution of everybody taking a hit because the pie is getting sliced with the BCHL taking a piece too? So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, because I think some of the better players, let's say from Ontario, in many cases, if they want to go the NCAA route, they come into the USHL. This is like creating a different pathway. So if those kids didn't want to completely uproot, their family to have to move there and establish residency and, do all that stuff, all those hoops that you're going to have to jump through in order to play there, they just go to the USHL and they bill it somewhere, and it's just a cleaner process. I think this is them trying to compete with the USHL.
Well, it most certainly is exactly that. So I don't think from an American perspective, just purely looking at it from an American hockey player first, I don't think this changes much for an American hockey player. We already got an allotment of players up there. Unless they change the minimums and allow more Americans up to play there, I don't foresee much of a change at all. In fact, what I could see is if the European market opens up and there's 3, 4, 5 players from Europe that are allowed on the rosters now too, is a separate category, or does it fall under imports? Usually what they do is they have a separate category for U.S. and then imports on most junior leagues. That's, they kind of break it down separately. Now, if they do this, it could actually cost, some American players some opportunities, which would press them back into the USHL or the North American Hockey League. Now, I know for a fact that a lot of the general managers in the USHL, once a player decides to go to the BCHL route first, if they get trimmed or cut or it doesn't work out, the USHL a lot of times snubs them. They go, nope, we're full. We're ready to go on our own direction. And it's been that way. You can talk to some of the guys that have been around in the league a few years. I'm not saying they're all like that, but there's quite a few guys that look at it like that. They're very competitive with that league already. The USHL's been kicking butt now for 4, 5, 6 years, and it really has left every other league in the dust. Even the major juniors they were talking about, the Q, the W, the O, all these leagues now, they don't have the same numbers as far as quality hockey players that the USHL has. It's the deepest league right now, and it's producing the most first-round picks. It's producing the most players, per roster. That's where it's at right now. So I get it that they want to be on the same level as the USHL. I get it that they want to compete there. I just don't think there's an advantage for a U.S. player. This might be good for any kid outside of the BC, the actual province. But I don't know. That's the way I see it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it still remains to be seen if there's a push that they're trying to make that they're just not saying out loud right now, as they try to transition into this.
Yep.
Where it could be them putting a huge focus on trying to get a bunch of U.S. kids into their league and try to compete directly in the, for the US kids with the USHL, or if this is more to maybe pull some kids that might consider going to the OHL or to, the WHL. Obviously, those kids for the most part don't really care about NCAA, but maybe they would reconsider. Obviously, the Quebec kids, to get them to consider going to the BC route and then going to the US college route and then obviously to the NHL, there's just a lot of factors that go into it that I'm not exactly sure like what their main focus is. But, obviously if they don't have any import rules or they don't follow some of the rules that are in place with Hockey Canada, it could also backfire on them, because
we've seen that. We saw the what's happened with the NCDC when they pulled away from USA Hockey, when they opened up and expanded the amount of foreign players they allowed into the program. It didn't necessarily, first of all, the European players are not dominating the upper part of the league as much as I thought they were going to. The other part of it is their numbers have stayed exactly the same as far as the output. I thought at first when they first did, I thought the NCDC when they were getting 8 or 9 or 10 kids a year, these are fresh commits during the season. Obviously there's kids that already had their commit that come in and play on those teams too. But I thought it was going to be a slow surge and they'd simmer and grow a little bit from there. But now we're talking, 5, 6 years in, 7 years in, we're still seeing the same numbers from the NCDC across the board. So their innovation, we got to go independent. It's going to be better. USA Hockey is thwarting us because they've got their tier 1 choice. They've got their tier 2 choice. We don't have our space. We're going to do our own thing. Get it. Okay. Once again, don't agree with it, but I get it. The next thing they did was they said, we're going to open up the European markets and we're going to take more European players than other programs. Okay. They did it. And I'm not seeing them, break any barriers here to grow their league. Now, you could argue that that's a newer league. The BC is much more established. You could argue that the BC's already got a better level of players, and and there's so many good positives that the BC has that we're not comparing apples and oranges. I get that, but we have seen a major junior league try this already, and I would say that if I was going to grade that move, what do you think? C plus? That's where I'd put it at. I would not give it an A or a B. Because it didn't succeed in anything that the league that the precursor league to this, which was the EJHL, was doing already, and they did it better. So this BC model, I don't know where the improvement's going to be. Okay, maybe you market it better. Maybe you got these road shows they're talking about. Maybe there's a lot of things like that going on. But besides that, bringing a few European players in there, I don't know. I just
my thought pattern of not being connected to Hockey Canada was more along the lines of if you're playing for a BC team, and let's just say after Christmas, all of a sudden a USHL team or a NOL team wants to basically take that player and then roster them on their roster, and they can finish out the season, maybe give them a playoff bump, for their own team. Typically, you'd have to pay for that player. If it's a Canadian player, you're going to have to pay $4,000 if that player is going to come and play in the North American League. Well, that money actually goes to Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
So if they're not connected with Hockey Canada, is there even money involved, or how does that work? There's still some unknown when it comes to those scenarios, but that's one that could backfire with them not being connected to Hockey Canada, because I'm sure Hockey Canada would be like, hey, you're on your own when it comes to that type of stuff. If you're going to, remove yourself from our umbrella.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is that the BC had a chance to prove themselves every year in the Centennial Cup, which is the Canadian. All the CJHL teams would play. They'd send their best representative to the playoffs. They do their individual playoffs for the leagues. That all their champions would go and play in this, Champions of Champions tournament. And when they did this, the BC would always, fare very well. I mean, you'd have your outliers, your Brooks or somebody would once in a while step up, but the BC did very, very well over the years representing themselves. Even if they didn't always win the championship, the quality of teams they sent there were just unbelievable. And it's like playing on the Null. To win the BCHL championship, you get just it's arduous. That's the hardest of the different leagues to win is the BCHL championship. So, just like the NCDC, the longer the NCDC is away from that, now there's speculation. Is the NCDC as good as the Null? Only people who say that are the new people that are growing up in the sport now, and they just see a brand over here and they see a brand over there. It used to be all these people played in the States at the tier 2, tier 3 level, and you had championships. You had a national championship, so you could prove who was the best. And the NCDC, in their prior life, would always dominate that level, and they just built a great reputation off of dominating all the other junior leagues. Now, the Null and the USHL were not part of this. This was everything else. So the BC had that reputation too. The further they get away from this with this independence thing, I think it's going to actually be something hard to overcome, because now nobody can compare it. Now you got a Centennial Cup champion, and they're sit over here, and people can see it and go, oh, that's the champion. The BCHL, who do they play a championship against? Nobody. So they win. You got your own league championship, then they're done. I just think that could be something that's, if it's viewed the same way the NCDC is viewed, it could hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, and if somehow Hockey Canada wants to try to beef up, let's say the AJ, right now I would say out of all the junior A programs, or I should say leagues, the BC is the top league. When you're breaking down the SJ, the MJ, the AJ, the OJ, all these other leagues, they're definitely comparable in some cases to the USHL, but in most cases comparable to the NA, just overall rosters. So they're kind of sandwiched in between, the USHL and the NA. So them breaking away, if all goes right, it could be a good thing for them, and I think that's their plan. If things break the other way, or you get Hockey Canada focused in on crushing them, it could definitely break in the wrong way.
Yeah, in the States, that got quelled. There were some lawsuits in Minnesota that kind of put to bed early. Some precedence was set, and this is probably going back at least 10, 12 years. A player wanted to play AAU, and he wanted to be still eligible for USA Hockey. And USA Hockey blackballed anybody that was not in the USA Hockey system. Blackballed them all, especially Minnesota. They lost a lawsuit. It kind of opened up the door, and this is right before the system changed over to the cross ice and the new model of just cross ice for your younger players. So then all of a sudden it opened the door back up. So even though it was meant for older kids and stopping them from going to USA Hockey camps or being part of the developmental program, what it really did was open up the door so people could have these AAU side teams, these little might and squirt full ice teams that nobody can stop, because USA Hockey's not going to go down that road again. They're not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting a lawsuit that they'll probably lose again, because it was a monopoly. So, when we look at this whole thing and we look at where they're at right now with this model, I think that this is going to be interesting. But what I don't know is, what's the next step? Is the next step to expand more into Washington State, into California? Because that's the fertile ground right now. That's the area that really doesn't have enough. We've talked about this before. There's not enough junior exposure to that Northwest market, and even into Southern Cal. We could argue even that you get into Nevada, there's no representation. I mean, you got these Western teams, there's some of the USPHL, lower level teams, premier teams, and elite. But I'm talking about the big boys. Is that the move?
We'll find out.
It'd be interesting, won't it? We got a lot to talk about. I want to get a couple comments. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I did see a rumor, and I don't know how true it is or what, that the NA was trying to purchase the BC League.
Interesting. I don't know that. I don't know. Would that be a good move?
I have no idea. The NA's got a lot of teams already. That would add instantly a bunch more.
Yep.
But I don't know how they would work that. I don't even know if it's true, but I did read it online, so it's got to be true, right?
Oh my goodness, that'd be close to a 50-team league. Wow.
They'd be playing every weekend.
But I tell you what, maybe they do that with the intent. If they did that, I would do it with the intent that the league has got to go back down to 45 after you make the merger. You take the synergy of both leagues and then you try to weed out the fat. So maybe if they got with the BC included, that would be an unbelievable league, and it would solve a lot of problems with players feeling they got to, there is this stigma for 50% of the prep players that are committed. 50% of the prep players committed go to the BC. Okay, that's a high number, and that's a provable stat. You can look it up on EP yourself if you want. Not you, Mike, but anybody that's listening. So that'd be interesting. Okay, we got things that I want to jump on here and make sure. So Miles asked the question, not overly relevant to the topic, but is it a bad choice for an 06 goalie to play with a great BCHL team as a practice goalie for one season? What are your thoughts, Mike? So you got one of the better teams in the BC says, hey, look, we like you. Remember next year the graduating class is 03s. That'll be your last year in juniors. So you got a kid that's got 04, 05, and 06. He's got 3 years of eligibility if he goes up and just plays as a practice player. What are your thoughts on that?
I would not do that. I would play for a team where you got the pressure to try to win games and you're in the net, hopefully as the number one, getting 80-20, or even 60-40. And, you're basically battling in the heat of the game with your team, not just going out there and practicing.
I would agree with you on this, Mike, which is rare, but we'll do it anyway. Miles, I would look at it from a little bit different angle. Many times when you got a young player and they look at an opportunity to play in the BC, the USHL, the NAL, NCDC, all these teams that are out there that carry 3 goalies, one gets most of the time. Maybe it's a 50-50 with 1-2. Third is non-existent. And you think, oh boy, if I just hang in there, maybe I'll get my shot this year. I can tell you right now, an 06 playing in the BCHL, going from practice goalie to starter or going to into a large contributing number 2 position would be extremely rare. And I think that's the delusion that most people you have to fight is thinking, okay, that's my foot in the door and this is going to expand. By the end of the year, we can prove ourselves, and the family looks at it that way. If you're not looking at it that way, maybe it's not a bad opportunity. And it also depends, what are your options? Are your options a good, solid program to play in where, like Mike's saying, you can get games? I mean, if I was living in the middle of, New Brunswick and this opportunity came up, maybe it's a little different for me where I'd jump on it. Free ice, free training, free billeting, all those things. If that's true, maybe. But if you're not in New Brunswick or you're not in the middle of Arkansas where there is no place to play, probably playing youth hockey and building up from there where you get a really competitive league you're playing in is a much stronger process. So thanks for the question, Miles. Other comments are coming in, but none are related to what we're chatting about right now. So we'll keep rolling on to the next topic. The next topic, let's talk about the NAL. Let's talk about where they're at. Let's talk about their just unbelievable Robertson Cup that's going on right now. I'm thrilled to death that it's been exciting as a fan. Disappointed, you and I, because of our attachment to one team, but boy, we talked about it when we're one team. We try to stay unbiased, but our little bias, a little pull once in a while is Lone Star Brahmas. We're both involved with the program. We knew going into this series it was going to be a tough series. We knew going into this it was probably going to go 4 or 5 games. We knew it was going to be as tight as possible, and we knew it was going to be exciting. Did we get everything that we expected out of this series, except for our personal outcome we wanted?
Yeah, I mean, aside from which team is advancing, although you did pick the winner of it, but I think it was even tighter than we expected. the fact that how many overtimes did we end up going in, counting
6.
having 4 overtimes in the first game?
6
I mean,
overtimes total.
that's incredible. So I think
Yeah.
out of the 5 games, was it 3 out of the 5 went to overtime?
Yeah, and the other games were a 2-0 win by Lone Star and a 1-0 clinching game by Shreveport. I mean, we're not talking – none of these games – it was exactly what we thought these two teams were going to bring to the table, and they did. And if you got a chance to watch that last game, what was unbelievable is this is Game 5. Now, playoff hockey is tough at any level. A 5-game series in the Null in the South is extremely tough. These guys were banging and playing and clutching and grabbing for every single piece of ice. Now, it wasn't like the old Norris. There was not a bunch of holding going on. I didn't mean it that way. But they were fighting for every inch of ice. And you thought that Game 5 was like a Game 1. And the energy level, just the feel in the arena, it was unbelievable. I really, really enjoyed the series.
Yeah, the thing that was so different compared to some of the other series we watched or even the USHL is there was absolutely no room on the ice because both teams kept such a close gap to their opponent that anytime somebody had the puck, you had a guy defending you in your face and you had a back checking or support player on your back. And it didn't matter if you moved the puck quickly enough because just the way that they were competing and how hard they were tracking pucks, there was like no space out there. So, 1 or 2 goals that you got in a game, you might have only had 5 opportunities in the whole game to even score. So to get 2 out of 5 that's something, you know what I mean? So It's just as a coach and as a player, that would be very difficult to play in with just how tightly checked, how structured it was. There was just no space. So both teams deserve a lot of credit for just how disciplined they were in that.
So, Mike, I'm going to have you pull up the null. Everything's going slow on my end. So just so we can talk about it. First of all, let's talk about the different divisions and what matchups we've got, and who's the series and what moves on now.
Yeah, so while you're trying to pull that up, just real quick, our predictions. So of all the different matchups that have happened so far, can you guess what your record was?
It doesn't matter. I called the biggest one. The one that was the hardest to call. I should get 4 bonus wins for calling that series right.
You're stalling. What was your record? It was 5-3.
5-3.
My record
7-1. Okay, I'll let you have that, okay? Because what did I tell you right after we got off the air last week? I said I had to go counter to you to add more spice. I had to pick some teams to make sure that everybody felt like, we weren't both homers picking the same thing all the time. So I took the bullet for this. I took a bullet and picked some teams just because I wanted to make sure it was good entertainment, okay?
I didn't take the number 1 seat in all of my matchups to make it 7-1.
How many number 1 seeds did you take?
Well, I mean, there's only one number 1 seed in each of the different matchups. You still have to go 2 through 3 and things like that.
Yeah. So how many of the favorites did you take in each matchup?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3. 3 out of the.
You only took 3 favorites out of the eight series?
I believe so. Maybe 4. Yeah.
Then you deserve it. You're the king of the Null playoffs. I'll give you that.
Thank you. That's all we need. Let's end the show. That's all we need.
You just got to stop right there, huh?
So anyway, the matchup that
yeah, we can be cheesy.
Yeah, so obviously Austin made it through. Actually, something to call out here, out of all of the matchups that happened in the Null, every single one except for Lone Star and Shreveport was a sweep. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. So, I mean, all these teams made it through their matchup pretty easy. which we've talked about even when we went through these different matchups, that, the South Division usually beats the crap out of each other. And, even though they're the best division, sometimes they kind of wear themselves out and don't have a shot at the end. Outside of Shreveport, everybody kind of had it easy, and they've had time to take a break and reset and everything before the next matchup started. So, nobody's really at the advantage until you get to the Oklahoma and
So
Shreveport.
let's just go division by division. Which two teams came out of the division, and let's do a reset here.
Okay. So in the Central, are you able to pull it up on your end? Because I
still got a spinny wheel over on that computer screen, so I'm surprised that we're actually.
On my end.
But the Null's been that way all day long. Their website, I've been getting on every other league website, and they've just been slow.
Yeah, well, we can talk through it, but in the first division that we typically cover, Austin's going to face off against St. Cloud. So I'm getting the spinning wheel too. So their site must be delayed. So Austin, for me, we've talked about Austin throughout this whole year. We actually did a couple episodes where we highlighted a couple of their players. Actually, the two guys we talked about, I think on our first or second podcast that we had back at the very beginning of this year, both of the kids got drafted into the USHL.
They sure did.
So, we were on to them pretty early with, just how well they were playing. And again, that was real early in the season that we were going through that. So I picked St. Cloud. I have some ties to that program with some of the kids that I've coached. Their goaltender, Ethan Dahlmeyer, he was also drafted into the USHL today. He is a difference maker for their team. And, we talked about it in our last episode. Just St. Cloud is a different team once they've acquired some players closer to the trade deadline, and they play a little bit more of a structured game, and the pieces are just starting to fit. So I could definitely see them winning, but I'm not going to go against Austin. I think with Morrissey and Goffredo and, just some of the players we've talked about in the past, they're just too deep for me to think that they're going to lose this series. So I'm going to stick with Austin.
Okay. Now you got to make a pick.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I'm going Austin too. I'm just going to copy you so I can get a good record. No, I can't do that because now that I'm down 2 games in this whole thing, I got to pick against you.
No. You got to pick with who you think's going to win so that there's not going to be the same matchups that we're picking every single team the same. And if there is, then maybe we both know what we're doing.
I say Austin in 4.
Okay. And it's a 5-game series, so in 3.
You're saying 3? It's going to be a sweep again?
Oh, you're saying Austin in 4 games? They're going to win?
In 4 games.
Got it.
That's how people would normally say it. I don't know how you do it in your household. But
we don't talk hockey over here.
Since you're still using an AOL dial-up system in your house.
Yeah. All right, so the next matchup would be Wisconsin versus Minnesota. You want to go first so that way I don't pick your team?
Boy, oh boy. I learned I took my welts on calling these 2 teams last time. I watched a couple of the games this last series from both teams. Well, I watched one from one side, 1 Minnesota game and 2 Wisconsin games. Boy, I like Wisconsin. I mean, I really do like them. I'm going to pick Wisconsin, and I'm going to say Wisconsin in 5.
Yeah, I think this one will be fairly close. There's some, pretty good balance between the 2 teams. Like their rosters and the type of star power each team has is pretty balanced. Wisconsin's my pick as well. I think the Lewandowski kid, who actually used to be on the Chicago Steel a couple years ago, and he actually did well in the USHL. I'm surprised he is not still there and is playing in the NA, but that's for him. He's one of the top players, and he's doing really well. He's a lot to handle for a lot of teams. So due to him and Gavin Moffitt, their goaltender, who also was drafted into the USHL today, he's got a 2 even goals against average and a .938 save percentage. That is really good for especially this division that plays a little bit more wide open than, say, the South
He'd be
or
a
some of the
fourth
other
line
divisions.
goalie in the South, though. Holy smokes! That last series, I think everybody had about a .23 goals against.
That
Holy
is
smokes!
true. That's a regular season, but yeah, but he's, like I said, he's a difference maker. I think Wisconsin will win, so we got the same pick for that one.
Okay, tell me what you think about the other divisions.
All right, so the next one we have is Maryland versus Maine. Maryland's been one of the top teams in the NA the whole year. Them and Oklahoma were kind of battling for 1 and 2 throughout the year. I did pick Maine to get here and to beat New Jersey, which they ended up doing. So I'm going to stick with Maine. And the reason why is not because of any individual player, their goaltending, but as a collective team, they're very solid. When you look at their plus minuses, I think we went through this the last time. Very little minuses on their team. I think there was one kid total on their roster. They're very good 5-on-5. They play with structure. They're just difficult to play against. And because of that, I think they're going to go through Maryland.
Yeah, so
Favorite.
Yeah, Maine's an interesting program. 3 years ago they made a run, made it to the Final Four. They made it to Blaine. They got beaten by Shreveport in the series. I think 2-0. I can't remember if they won. I don't think they won a game. Then they kind of fell off the table a little bit again. Now they're back in the run, and they're showing something there. Coaching staff hasn't changed. I think I should say it's the same people, different roles. The head coach now is he was an assistant coach back then, or associate head coach. What I like about this team is what you just said. They've got a level of professionalism and a level of detail of the way they play. I really like that. However, on the other side of the coin, I'm gonna say that Maine may outcoach themselves in this series with Maryland. Maryland might stay looser in this. I'm going with Maryland, but I'm saying it's a 5-game series.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Maryland. In all honesty, they have way more firepower. They're faster, more skilled, but like I said, I'm sticking with the collective team of Maryland and making it through. All right, and the last matchup here in the Dirty South, you got Oklahoma versus Shreveport.
Oof.
What say you?
Well, first of all, it's kind of like being in the Big Ten. You might not be a Michigan fan, but once Michigan wipes everybody else out, you cheer for them when they go to the national game or the bowl game. Or if Illinois wins in basketball, you might not like Illinois, but they're the Big Ten representative. Shreveport is the team that knocked us out. I have personal ties there. My son won a Robertson Cup with them 3 years ago. I know the staff well down there. Boy, I just hope it's not a burnout factor. But Shreveport right now, great goaltending. They're getting a little bit of everybody. They what I liked about them in the series is they played a little bit loose. They kept the game. They were intense, but they were still trying to open it up when they could. It's hard to do against Lone Star. Lone Star does not allow teams, a lot of opportunities, but they still found a way to get a couple 2-on-1s a game. They still found a way to get some odd man rushes, and once in a while they'd bust a guy out. They just seem to have a little bit more of a loose attitude for that level of play that I think might help them against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, on paper, probably is a better team than Shreveport. On paper, in my opinion, they're a better team. You got a good coaching staff, but you got a guy that's got you got a program that's got several Robertson Cups. You've got a program with a coach that's only 2 seasons off from his last Robertson Cup. He's got 3 to 5 players that because a couple of the guys were on the roster, but they just didn't see games in the playoffs. So you got a lot of players that still have Robertson Cup championship experience on Shreveport, and I think that's going to carry them. I take Shreveport in this, and I take Shreveport in 4 games.
Yeah, I think if Shreveport, though, turns it into a run and gun type of series, they aren't winning that series. If they keep it tight and they take away the space and the skill and the speed of Oklahoma City, then they've got a shot. because
Oklahoma
Oklahoma
on
City.
paper is a better team. I tell you what, though, even if it goes run and gun, Shreveport's got a netminder right now that's playing at the highest level that an all goalie can play. You see this a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember when Shreveport won it last time. It was their number 2 goalie over an NHL draft pick, or was he on the watch list or was he a draft pick at the time? Anyway, he ended up being a USHL goalie next year. He was on the NHL watch list at the time. He might have been drafted to it. I have to go back and look. He never got in because the second string goalie got hot and ran through the whole playoffs, with the number 1 spot. Unpredicted because this other kid was heralded. This was a kid that when at the beginning of the season in Blaine, when Shreveport played the evening games, it was a packed house to watch the kid play because all the NHL people came in, all the other Division I programs were in. Everybody was watching this kid play because he was so good. And I think they got the same kind of goaltending right now. They got a guy playing on the top of his game. And if that's the case, I'll give it to him even if it goes run and gun. I think that he can stand on his head and go old school 1987 Grant Fuhr kind of hockey.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I disagree. So I think if they keep it to a 2-1, a 3-2 type situation, I think Shreveport can win. But if they're going to have to try to score more than 3 goals in a game, they're not winning that series. They just don't have the firepower to compete with that. So based on them having a really difficult series against Lone Star, and the fact
that's
that
the
Oklahoma
Achilles heel.
City,
Yep, that's the Achilles heel.
they're well rested. Shreveport might not have enough in the tank to keep up with the speed and some of the higher level players that Oklahoma City has.
Yep.
And I think that's what's going to be the difference in this series. And if it's not, it's because they keep it really tight. There's no space. Buechler stands on his head like he is very capable of doing and probably will do. That's the only way OKC's not moving on.
The other thing about this, I think Shreveport's got to smack them quick. They got to jump on the first game. If they take that first game, I think their odds of rejuvenating and getting over that tired feeling is. If they lose that first game, it's like the uphill battle for the players. It's going to be tough just because of all the overtime games. Think about it. They played 2 extra games in that first round of hockey as far as total minutes go.
They played over 2 games in game 1. They played three periods, and then they had 4 overtimes that are all 20 minutes, 5-on-5.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yep. Okay, so enough. No, do we want to get into the USHL? We're already 53 minutes in. Why don't we hold?
So. Otherwise, it'll be over by the time we cover it.
Okay, let's cover the USHL quickly, and let's talk about where they're at right now. I'm trying to pull that up so we can take a look and get the playoff standings here. Their website is working, which is always nice. So, but I don't like about this is they don't break it down and show you round by round. They just give you the overall. So
we're down to the final 4.
Okay, let's talk about the final 4. I'm going to bring this up so people can see what the bracket looked like as far as games and how many wins, losses of the 16 playoff teams. And
I think if you go to the schedule for the month of May, it'll show you the matchups that go under stats, and then go to schedule.
Oh, there we go.
So, it's the game schedule, but you can see who the matchups are.
Yeah, there we go. That makes sense.
So you got Lincoln versus Fargo in the first matchup. Lincoln beat Waterloo to make it in. Fargo beat Tri-City to make it in. For me, we talked about it in our USHL, predictions. Fargo for me, I think is the top team. I'm sticking with them to advance out of this series. I think they've got the high level scoring ability with a kid like Cole Knubel, who had 66 points. But the thing that I think that separates them is the USHL is not always the most physical league, especially when you compare them to, say, the Null or whatnot. But Fargo has players on their team that have sandpaper in their game. They finish checks. They're willing to fight. I don't think there's going to be any fights in the playoffs, but if there were, they'd be ready to go. And because of that little extra grit factor, I
Don't
think it's
use that word. Come on, everyone use that word. Housewives use that word now. You get all the woke people even using grit now. Come on, got to get.
What do you want to call it? What do you want to call it?
Toughness, thick skin. Not politically correct, but ballsy. Anything but grit. I mean, come on. Now you see grit in like house cleaning commercials where you got the little housewife running around going, "Oh, my grit." Come on. I'm so over that word. So over that word.
All right. I didn't know you had a trigger word, but now we do.
I'm triggered. That's right. I'm triggered.
What a snowflake. So I think, their goaltending with Moranov, who has been one of the top goalies all year. He's on like the NHL scouting list and all this, all this other stuff. 2.36 goals against with a .917 save percentage. I think that Fargo's taken this series. But
I agree with you on Fargo. Let's move down to the next series.
Next one, you got Youngstown facing off against the Chicago Steel. Obviously, I'm going to stick with the Chicago Steel. They are loaded. They made it this far. They beat Dubuque, and they didn't even have Max Celebrini on their team, who was playing in the U18 World Championship, World Juniors, whatever it's called. So now they'll get him back, who's only the leading scorer in the USHL and 86 point getter in 60 games.
Yeah.
To go along with 3 other guys on their roster that have 70 plus points. So, for me, they're gonna have no issue moving on in this series.
So I agree with you. You look at the 2 teams on the top, though. I shouldn't say I agree with you. I hear what you're saying. That's a real respectable pick. I think that Youngstown is the up and comer. They're the sleeper. This is a team that was on the basement. If we just go back and look at last year, and let's go back to 21-22, and middle of the road. You go back the year before that, 19-20. I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but where are they at? Where are they at? There they are, down at the bottom. Not quite at the bottom, but this is a team that's been kind of for a few years now. And I think they got energy there. The coaching staff has got energy. We know the general manager, he's got energy. They've got a different feel there. They're bringing in a different style of player. I'm going to say that you're right on who's going to win this, but I say it's going to be just a bloodbath. I think it's going to not fights, but just good hockey. And I think that Youngstown's going to lose this in a heartbreaker. I think it's going to be that close. What's that?
Yeah, I thought you were going with Youngstown.
No, I'm not going with Youngstown, but I think they're gonna make it that kind of a series where it's gonna be darn close.
Well, yeah, I mean they have Whitelaw on their team, who is going to be a highly drafted player in not this coming draft, or maybe he is this coming draft. Either way, he's a potential first rounder in either this year or next year. He's really good. Their goaltender, Jacob Fowler, another, one of the top goalies in the league. When you get to the Final Four, all these teams are really good. They've got really good players, but the top end talent that the Steel have, I mean, it's unbelievable. The only way the Steel lose, and this is what I said when we did our preview show, was if Youngstown is able to play with more grit than Chicago.
Okay, the show's over. That's it. Let's call it a night. Grit. All right, pick your other team from the other division, and we'll wrap it up on that.
That's it. We're down to the Final Four.
I know. Did we do both sides? We did do both sides. I'm sorry. We did.
The last thing we had was the USHL draft was today for phase 2 and yesterday for phase 1.
We'll talk about phase 1 and phase 2 next week. Really, I had it on in the background all week long, or all 2 days long. I didn't really see anything that jumped out of me that's out of the norm. There wasn't like any unusual. People will always ask, why is a kid coming out of the National Training and Development Program getting drafted so high by the USHL? There's a lot of reasons. And a lot of it's strategy when you start talking about the players that are that good at playing at that level. Think about it. Let's take an example, because this will be fun to talk about real quick. Let me pull up the USHL draft, and we'll take a look at one thing, just because it could be fun to look at this.
Well, I did track a couple trends that I was looking at, because we always get asked a lot of questions about, which league is better and, different things like that when they start comparing league to league. And I stopped following this maybe in the 5th, or I can't remember where I cut it off, but 5th or 6th round. I mean, I think the draft is still going on. The thing takes forever. But in the 5th or 6th round, how many players do you think came from the North American League, the BC, the AJ, the MJ, the NCDC? Like, if you were to rank all of those different teams or all those different leagues, who would you think had the most kids drafted?
The Null.
Yep.
Am I right?
Yeah, the Null had, again, I don't know where I stopped. Maybe the 5th or 6th round. People can go back and check it.
If you take the time to watch some of the videos I put together, that wouldn't have been a surprise to you. The Null's the biggest.
It's not a surprise to me. How many times you get asked the question on the side column that says, what's better, the NCDC or the Null? What's better, the BC League or the Null?
Yeah, it's overwhelming. You got 45-50% of the league comes from the Null. The players move from there, and there's a lot of movement back and forth there. Not a lot is keeping in perspective. It's not like the USHL sends 10 guys down to the Null and pulls 10 other guys up from the Null. But there is a two-way street there, and there's also a lot of players that are drafted from that league, much more than anywhere else.
But if you go through the first 5 to 6 rounds, 17 guys from the Null, 0 from the NCDC, 7 from the BC League, 3 from the AJ, 3 from the MJ, and 1 from the SJ.
Yep. Now you're preaching to the choir there. I fully agree with you. Let's take a look at Beckett Hendrickson. He was the 3rd overall pick. I'm going to go over here and see if the draft board has already got him up on the USHL draft up. I did not check Elite Prospects, but if Elite Prospects has got the phase 2 draft up, it'll make life much easier for us to look at all this. And they do. So let's go down and grab Beckett Hendrickson. Beckett plays on the National Development Program, and he was drafted by Sioux Falls. And there's a few players in there like that. Now, what I want to do is just look at his overall stats for the year. He's a 16-point guy in half their games. Overall, 52 games, 34 points. So on that team, if we look at that team, 34 points on this team puts you at, where is he at on here? Why doesn't it Beckett Hendrickson?
He's top 10.
Where's he at?
For his team, he's number 9.
Which one did you pull up? Oh, you pulled up okay, I was on the second one down. So there he is. He's number 9. That's exactly the type of kid that might stick around for another year. Why? If he sticks around for another year, guess who goes away? Will Smith goes away. Gabe Pearl goes away. He's not competing against those guys. He's a year older. He's got all that National Training and Development Program experience on the belt. Sticks around in the league for one more year. It might open up the door for him to get a better look for his ability to move on to the NHL. This is a chess match here and strategy. What any team that's doing the drafting is looking over here, and he's ranked 64. But look at all the names that he's competing against on his own team. he's got 5 or 6 guys ahead of him on his own team that are higher than him. So even though he's 64, maybe he moves up to 40, maybe he moves up to 30, maybe he moves up to the top 20 if he sticks around for another year. So I think this is a move that you do when you're trying to separate yourself. He's considered a second or third liner right now. Okay. He goes and plays one more year. He's going to be a first line player. He's going to get first line experience. He's going to get that first line points total. So I think he goes from, if he stays and does do this and he goes with that draft, I think he goes from a 30-point guy to a 50-point guy to a 60-point guy, just off the fact that he's going to be much more mature, older, and will be able to play and actually shine a little bit more than being on a team just full of draft picks already. You might play with 2 or 3 draft picks if you go on another team. You're not playing against 8 or 10 or 12 like you do with the National Development Program. Do we need to even discuss it anymore? Did I just hit it out of the park with that?
Well, I kind of look at it a little bit differently.
Of course you do.
I don't think he's leaving the program. He can't return to the program.
Fully understand that, but he could go and play.
He's going to the University of Minnesota, and
Exactly.
If they don't have a scholarship ready for him, and they think he needs another year, or they're backed up a little bit,
that could be the practical answer too. However, if you got a guy that's a top 60 or right around the top 60, projected NHL draft player, and you say, hey, look, we don't have a spot for you this year, and we know you're coming out of the National Development Program. Do you think that really is going to go very well with whoever's advising him, his advisor, which is an agent, which is a powerful agency? I'm not sure who he's dealing with because it doesn't list his agent on here, but that conversation isn't going to fly. If he wants to play, Division I college hockey next year, damn well he's got an opportunity to play anywhere he wants to, because of what program he's coming out of and how successful he's been. He's a great hockey player. I'm just using him as an example of why some of these kids might, decide to separate themselves. Instead of going in as a freshman, he might even be looking at that Minnesota roster. Maybe it's his decision that he goes, man, there's, it's a top-heavy, talented team, because that Minnesota team does return a lot of talent. Maybe he says, hey, look, if I go one more year, I come in bigger and stronger, and I'm the man quicker if I just wait one more year here. And why waste a year of eligibility if you're going to be, a situation where you're not the man? That I'm just giving you one option that it could be. That's been a very, very controversial topic with these guys in the past. Why are you using that draft pick? Well, I think that your USHL teams that draft these top national development players, that's what they're hoping, that these kids want to separate themselves from the rest of the guys. They want to get a little bit bigger and stronger and play one more year.
Yep, that's one way.
Yep. Okay. At least my way was a little bit more enticing than, there's no room. That doesn't make for good live streaming. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when things are backed up and you're not quite ready, or the team doesn't think you're quite ready to make it in. You can't go back to the U.S. development program, and if you're not yet ready for college, you play an additional year in the USHL, but you have to go to one of the other teams. Yeah,
since he's a Minnesota kid, he's probably stuck to Minnesota, probably because of tradition and the fact that he wants to play there. But the reality is, with any other kid coming out of the National Development Program, if they wanted to go play D1 the next year, they're going to play D1 because there'd be tons of teams that want to play. Minnesota's the anomaly. They're on top of the heap. You don't get bigger than Minnesota, regardless of who won this year. But let's not forget, this is a guy that's got a dad that probably had 10 years, 12 years, played for Maple Leafs, been around for a while. He's probably got a good idea where the path is going to go. I mean, the whole family is, they're chock full of pro players, in their past, good hockey players. So, we'll see.
Yeah, if you look at the class he'd be going in with, there's probably a top 1 or 2 overall NHL draft pick next year in his class.
Yeah, so you let those guys get their one and done, because you're going to see a lot of those guys that are going to go in the first round. They'll play 1 year of Division I college hockey, then they'll move on. So, All right.
If even that.
Yeah, that's true. All right. We've had enough talk tonight. You got everything out of your system now? Did we cover enough to make up for not being on last week?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're in good shape.
Good. Congratulations once again on being a better picker of teams than me. But I'll still take honor in picking the hardest one of the series and picking it right and calling it a 5-game series. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. I'll never go against our guys, so I'll always get that one wrong if we end up losing it.
Yeah, see, but that's the difference in being an unbiased person by nature and being somebody that can't be objective. So
just loyalty, that's all.
I told you I'm loyal. I just as a fan, I took my hat off as a worker and put my hat on as a fan. So all right, listen, good for everybody that stuck around. I know we started out with a large audience, and then we started getting a little bit we lost a few people, but that's okay. It's hard to stay on for an hour and a half. Is there NHL games on tonight? Do you know? I didn't even look.
I would assume. I'm sure every night they should have at least one or two moving forward.
Yeah, good hockey going on there too. So, all right, make sure you check in with us next Monday night. Junior Hockey Advisor. We did not want to go up against that Shreveport Lone Star game this last week. That's why we did not broadcast. Make sure you go on to Junior Hockey Live YouTube, like and follow there. You can go on to Junior Hockey Advisor, and you can like and follow that YouTube page too. The YouTube pages are where it's at. We need help there, so if you can jump on and subscribe, we sure would appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, Mike. We did a great job tonight.
Take care, everyone.